Welcome back, everybody. The Trump administration is reportedly working on a directive that would force all parts of the government to stop using Anthropic's AI technology.
An AI company refused to let the Pentagon use its technology for mass surveillance of Americans, so the President of the United States blacklisted them, ordered every federal agency to immediately stop using their products, labeled them a national security threat, the same designation reserved for Chinese companies like Huawei. Companies from adversarial nations trying to sabotage America. Except this company is American, founded in San Francisco, valued at $380 billion. And their crime? Saying no to the military. This is not a hypothetical. This happened 3 weeks ago. February 27, 2026. President Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "The left-wing nutjobs at Anthropic have made a disastrous mistake trying to strong-arm the Department of War. Their selfishness is putting American lives at risk. Therefore, I am directing every federal agency in the United States government to immediately cease all use of Anthropic's technology. We don't need it, we don't want it, and will not do business with them again." Hours later, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth declared Anthropic a supply chain risk. That label means every defense contractor, every company that works with the Pentagon, must certify they do not use Anthropic's AI in their workflows. According to CNBC, the decision could cost Anthropic multiple billions of dollars in 2026 revenue, hundreds of millions in contracts immediately terminated. And it sets a precedent that should terrify every tech company in America. Here is what actually happened. Anthropic makes an AI called Claude. You might be using it right now. It is one of the most advanced AI models available. In July 2025, the Pentagon signed a $200 million contract with Anthropic. Claude became the first AI model deployed on the military's classified networks. According to CNBC, it was used during the operation to capture Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro. It was used for intelligence assessments in the U.S. conflict with Iran. Military personnel loved it. According to Brad Carson, former Defense Department official and ex-Navy intelligence officer who served in Iraq, warfighters viewed Claude as, quote, "the most reliable, with the most user-friendly outputs they can assimilate into planning." Then, in January 2026, the Pentagon wanted to renegotiate the contract. They had a new demand. According to Axios, they wanted Anthropic to allow the military to use Claude for, quote, "all lawful purposes." No restrictions, no red lines, full access. Anthropic's CEO, Dario Amodei, said no. He laid out two specific boundaries. According to NPR, Anthropic would not allow Claude to be used, quote, "to enable the department to surveil U.S. persons at scale, and would not allow it to field weapon systems that may kill without human oversight. Mass domestic surveillance and fully autonomous weapons. Those were the red lines." The Pentagon was furious. According to Axios, Defense Undersecretary Emil Michael was on the phone offering Anthropic a deal, even as Defense Secretary Hegseth was tweeting that the company would be designated a supply chain risk. That deal, according to sources familiar with the negotiations, would have required allowing the collection or analysis of data on Americans, geolocation data, web browsing data, personal financial information purchased from data brokers, all of it. Amodei refused. On February 25th, Hegseth set a deadline, 5:01 p.m. Eastern Time, Friday, February 27th. Agree to the Pentagon's terms or face consequences. According to Axios, Emil Michael called Amodei a, quote, "liar with a God complex who was okay putting our nation's safety at risk." On Thursday, February 26th, Amodei released a public statement, quote, "Threats do not change our position. We cannot in good conscience accede to their request." The deadline passed. Trump issued the blacklist order. Hegseth designated Anthropic a supply chain risk, and within hours, according to Axios, the Pentagon had moved on to OpenAI. Even though, according to the same reporting, OpenAI has similar red lines and a robust safety stack to enforce them. It was unclear whether the Pentagon was still insisting on legal collection of public personal data with OpenAI. Here is where this gets complicated. On February 28th, One day after Anthropic was blacklisted, OpenAI announced it had signed a new Pentagon deal. According to TechCrunch, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman claimed the deal included, quote, technical safeguards addressing the same issues that became a flashpoint for Anthropic. He said OpenAI's red lines were, quote, no domestic mass surveillance and human responsibility for use of force, including autonomous weapon systems. The Pentagon, he claimed, agrees with these principles. But Dario Amodei called that statement, according to Fortune, straight-up lies, and accused Altman of engaging in, quote, safety theater. The optics were brutal. Anthropic gets blacklisted for refusing the Pentagon's demands. OpenAI signs a deal the next day claiming they have the same red lines. Either OpenAI is lying about their safeguards, or the Pentagon accepted terms from OpenAI that they refused to accept from Anthropic. Or the contracts are worded differently enough that what looks the same on paper functions very differently in practice. And employees at both companies knew it. According to TechCrunch, more than 300 Google employees and over 60 OpenAI employees signed an open letter urging their leaders to support Anthropic and refuse unilateral military use of AI. The letter, titled, "We Will Not Be Divided," accused the Pentagon of trying to divide companies with fear that others would give in. Quote, they're trying to divide each company with fear that the other will give in. That strategy only works if none of us know where the others stand. According to Fortune, nearly 900 employees across Google and OpenAI signed the petition. Jeff Dean, Google DeepMind's chief scientist, publicly opposed mass surveillance by the government. OpenAI lost at least one senior staffer. Caitlin Kalinowski, who had led hardware and robotics since November 2024, resigned over the company's Pentagon deal. She said, according to Fortune, that domestic surveillance without judicial oversight and lethal autonomy without human authorization, quote, are lines that deserved more deliberation than they got. On March 9th, according to CNBC, Anthropic filed 2 federal lawsuits against the Trump administration. The company sued to vacate the supply chain risk designation, calling it, quote, unprecedented and unlawful. More than 30 employees from OpenAI and Google DeepMind, including Jeff Dean, filed an amicus brief supporting Anthropic. They argued the Pentagon's decision was, quote, improper and arbitrary and would harm U.S. competitiveness in AI. Here is what makes this extraordinary. According to national security experts cited by NPR, the supply chain risk designation typically applies to foreign adversary contractors that could sabotage U.S. interests. It is highly unusual to use this blacklist against an American company. The label has historically been reserved for companies like Huawei, Chinese firms suspected of espionage. Now it is being used to punish a San Francisco AI startup for refusing to help the government spy on Americans. And federal agencies are scrambling. According to Axios, besides the Pentagon, Claude was being used at the Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of Personnel Management, the Department of Energy, across Lawrence Livermore and Lawrence Berkeley National Labs, and NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. NASA announced in January that it completed its first ever AI-planned drive on Mars with the help of Claude. All of those agencies are now transitioning off Claude. According to CNBC, the transition is especially complicated within the Department of Defense because the U.S. is actively carrying out a military operation in Iran. Anthropic's models were still being used to support that operation even after the company was blacklisted. The Pentagon's argument is straightforward. According to their spokesperson Sean Parnell, the military has, quote, no interest in using AI to conduct mass surveillance of Americans, which is illegal. Nor do we want to use AI to develop autonomous weapons that operate without human involvement. They claim they only seek to use AI for lawful purposes, but they refuse to specify what those lawful purposes are. And they refuse to accept contract language that explicitly prohibited mass surveillance and autonomous weapons. Anthropic's argument is equally clear. According to the lawsuit filed in U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California, allowing Claude to be used for mass domestic surveillance and autonomous weapons, quote, would be inconsistent with Anthropic's founding purpose and public commitments. The company was founded specifically around AI safety and alignment. Amodei has said publicly that in a narrow set of cases, AI can undermine, rather than defend, democratic values. Here is the precedent being set. A private company negotiates a contract with the government. The government wants to change the terms. The company refuses, so the government blacklists them as a national security threat, destroys their business relationships, and threatens to invoke the Defense Production Act to force compliance. That is not a negotiation. That is coercion.
And it worked. According to Axios, Elon Musk's xAI signed a deal to move into the military's classified systems under the all-lawful use standard that Anthropic rejected. Google and OpenAI are negotiating to move into classified space. According to sources, the Pentagon insists they must lift their safeguards to get those contracts. One source described Claude as the most capable model in a number of military use cases, but described Google's Gemini as a strong alternative. Senator Mark Warner, Virginia Democrat and Vice Chair of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, condemned Trump's action. According to CNBC, he said the directive to halt use of a leading American AI company, quote, raises serious concerns about whether national security decisions are being driven by careful analysis or political considerations. The Wall Street Journal reported that Claude has already been used in military operations. The raid that arrested Nicolas Maduro, intelligence assessments, and identifying targets in the ongoing conflict with Iran. Anthropic partnered with Palantir to assist the government in, according to the lawsuit, rapid processing of complex data, identifying trends, streamlining document review, and helping government officials make more informed decisions in time-sensitive situations. None of that violated Anthropic's red lines. Mass surveillance and autonomous weapons did. This is happening right now. March 2026. An American AI company is in federal court fighting the US government over whether a private contractor can refuse to help the military conduct mass surveillance on Americans. The outcome will determine whether tech companies have any leverage to impose ethical boundaries on government use of their technology, or whether the Pentagon can simply threaten to destroy any company that says no. Tell us in the comments. Should private companies be able to refuse military contracts over ethical concerns? Or should the government have unrestricted access to any technology it wants to license? Because this case will answer that question. And the answer matters for every AI company, every defense contractor, and every American whose data could be swept up in mass surveillance systems powered by the most advanced AI ever created. If you like my video, please click on the like button and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.